Could a place built for laughter and light turn into the very heart of horror? On September 21st, 2013, shoppers strolled through Nairobi's Westgate Mall, unaware that a small team of armed men had slipped through a service entrance, their eyes cold with purpose as they moved through corridors once filled with music and chatter. Within seconds, the crack of gunfire shattered the calm, sending people ducking behind kiosks and under cafe tables, their shopping bags abandoned like fallen shields. A mother pressed her child to her chest, whispering promises of safety she dared not believe, as bullets tore through glass doors and ricocheted off marble floors. Security guards, trained for theft but not terror, radioed frantic calls for help, their voices cracking with disbelief. Outside, terrified families raced toward the building, phones held high to capture grieving screams and pleading cries for mercy. Inside, the attackers split into teams, their jackets and prayer beads twisted into chilling weapons, their rifles aimed at anyone who moved. An elderly man in a wheelchair was shoved aside. A group of friends froze mid-selfie, eyes wide in shock. A store clerk pressed his back against a display case, hand over his mouth to muffle frantic breaths. Time warped into a nightmare loop. 10 minutes felt like an eternity, each heartbeat a countdown toward death or deliverance. Somewhere above the rooftop, police helicopters churned the air, spotlights carving circles of light into the courtyard below, but the thick glass walls trapped survivors in a cocoon of smoke and fear. Cries for help echoed down service stairwells, voices bouncing off concrete like trapped birds. Then came whispered orders in Somali, the attackers moving methodically, checking rooms, executing the wounded, dragging the injured toward makeshift triage points where they measured life by the twitch of a finger. A former employee in the food court heard an odd click and realized too late it was the safety off a rifle. He dove under a counter as bullets sprayed above, sending shards of ceramic and chrome flying. Later, his colleague would recall the metallic tang in her mouth, the way her knees buckled at the smell of blood. Outside the Nairobi Police Rapid Response Unit formed a cordon, their sirens a rallying cry for courage. Armored vehicles edged toward the entrance. Negotiators shouted through loudspeakers, promising mercy in exchange for surrender. But the attackers answered with gunfire stamped in violence, a message that mercy was not on their terms. On the mall's rooftop, paramedics huddled behind barriers, preparing stretchers for the wounded who might crawl up the fire escape. Below, terrified hostages texted last messages, their screens lit with goodbyes and instructions to bury their loved ones under favorite songs.
In one salon, 3 friends huddled together, blocking small children with their bodies, whispering prayers in languages they barely remembered. The world watched in horror on live feeds. Families turned off phones to spare themselves, yet their hearts raced with each update. Every ambulance streak across the screen, a dagger of hope and dread. Hours crawled by. The once busy mall grew quiet, save for the echo of distant footsteps and the staccato of automatic weapons. Then came a flashbang, so bright and thunderous it felt like an earthquake underwater, disorienting the attackers and giving officers a slim advantage. Armored teams burst through the main entrance, shields locked like a moving wall, rifles raised, eyes scanning for targets and friendlies alike. In the chaos, a teenage girl slipped past, clutching a bloodied cloth to her side, tears streaking her face as she ran into open arms of rescuers. Medical teams streamed in, their masks stained with soot, as technicians yelled for med kits, for stretchers, for water. Life stitched back together in pockets of the mall once soaked in terror. The siege raged for days, body bags piled up, forensic teams tiptoed through shops, cataloging evidence like grim librarians. National Guardsmen manned barricades, filtering survivors through checkpoints where tears fell unchecked and uniforms trembled with exhaustion. International ambassadors issued statements, promises of solidarity dripping from polished lips, while survivors counted their blessings in numbers of fingers and toes. In the aftermath, 67 lives were lost, dozens more scarred in body and mind, the walls themselves scarred with bullet holes like ancient runes of grief. Families gathered in makeshift memorials outside the shattered entrance, flowers and stuffed toys laying claim to a place that once sold luxury and laughter. Psychologists later mapped the trauma, how the scent of gunpowder could trigger panic attacks, how the sound of a child's cry could drag a survivor back into the carnage. Journalists interviewed a security analyst who replayed CCTV footage frame by frame, noting how a single patrol guard's hesitation may have cost precious seconds. A former soldier turned investigator described the calculated efficiency of the attackers, their synchronized movements betraying military-style training. For years, Kenyan authorities debated security reforms. Bulletproof glass panels, armed patrols, emergency drills pushed onto busy days as everyone pretended they could forget. Meanwhile, survivors formed support groups, sharing flashbacks in candlelit rooms, the overhead lights of Westgate's remains casting long shadows even after closure. Anniversary vigils lit the courtyard in silent tribute. Candles flickering beneath portraits of the lost, each flame a heartbeat against oblivion. A poet recited lines about resilience, her voice trembling under the weight of memory. A teenage volunteer distributed water and blankets to grieving families, her own tears hidden behind determined eyes. Westgate Mall eventually reopened with steel-barred windows and armed guards at every entrance. But the laughter that returned was cautious, punctuated by the distant wail of sirens on training drills. In classrooms, teachers used the siege as a lesson in vigilance, students practicing exit routes and code words. Childhood innocence forever tinged with the knowledge that safety can shatter in an instant. And though new shops thrived under brighter lights, a subtle hush fell over the food court at dusk, as if the ghosts of that day still roamed the corridors, reminding every visitor. In the blink of an eye, a place of joy can become a chamber of nightmares. The question still haunts every corridor. When a place made for families can become a battlefield in minutes, how do we feel safe again? And will the next shadow hold a familiar face?